So today I want to start the third session, talking about relationships, learning to relate, learning to relate. We cannot have effective relationship if we have not learned to relate to one another. So this is critically important. Stay tuned. Again, I hope you got your pens, your pencils, your notepads, because I'm moving kind of brief. I'm on a time schedule so we can cover all of this information. So you can take notes, jot it down, because I may be moving rather briefly. Dr. Miles Monroe says something. I want to start with this quote. It says, "The time you are most prepared for dating is when you don't need anyone to complete you, fulfill you, or instill in you a sense of worth or purpose." He says that's the time you are best prepared for dating. For dating. Now, I want to start with some roles and purposes. Briefly, times have changed drastically throughout the course of times as it deals with male and female relationships. We can go back for a minute through history. In the older days, if we go back to the days of our grandparents and beyond, or our great grandparents, all depending on your age, as it relates to relationships, it was pretty simple. It wasn't a lot of the dynamics that we have today. And now let me say this before I get into this. I'm not making a case for one age being better than the next age. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to explain something so we can understand why we have some of the complications that we have today in the world of dating. All right. In the days of old, the world was driven very role based as it relates to relationships. Yes, there was a lot of sexism and so on. And it was like, if you were a woman, here's your role and here's what you do. If you were a man, here's your role and here's what you do. Now, I'm just explaining, I'm not justifying. So, in those days, the men from birth were taught to learn how to go out there and make a living. You've got to be strong. You've got to be tough. You're a man. You don't cry. You're a boy. Boys don't cry. So we were taught not to be emotional or not to show emotion. We were taught to be tough, to be physical in nature, to be strong, to go outside and play outside. Don't stay in the house all day. You're a boy. Get out of there and go play. Go help your dad chop wood or mow the lawn or fix the car, change the oil, rotate the tires. We were taught and to have our duties confined primarily to outside of the home. Or and dress like this. Don't wear that. Wear this. Don't wear that color. Wear this color. And while we were being groomed in a certain way, women or girls were being taught dress like this. Help your mom in the kitchen with the dinner. Go wash the dishes. Clean up the room. Make up your brother's bed. Here, learn how to sew. Learn how to cook. Learn how to clean. She was raised with her roles being primarily domestic and confounded to the home. You know, what are you doing out there in the dirt? Come back in this house. What are you doing out there playing with those boys? Get back in this house. That's no place for a young lady. Get back in this house. Dress like this. Wear this color, not that color. Put this on. Play with your baby dolls. Play with these things. And so this was instilled in us. And so men grew up. I got to go out there and make a living. And the girls grew up to become women. I've got to make sure I have dinner ready for my husband when he gets home. that I have the house clean when he gets home, that I'm ready, I have the meal prepared, that I have the children taken care of so he doesn't have to bother with them when he gets home from a hard day's work. And so manhood and womanhood were basically defined by these roles. Like if you operated in your role, you were considered a good man or a good woman based on how well you fulfill that role. I'm not justifying it, I'm explaining it. And then something very life changing happened. Pearl Harbor was bombed, and at the point that Pearl Harbor was bombed, all of the men had to go to war, and we had to go to defend our country and our rights and so on and so forth. And for the first time, those factories were left empty. All of those local workforces was left empty. So for the first time, by great and huge numbers, women entered into the workforce out of necessity. Because if you go back and study World War II, you find that women worked in the factories that built the ammunition that the men used in the war. And so after that was over with, men come back home from war, and that's where you get the baby boomers. Because we've been gone all of this time, it was some baby making going on. And I think during that time, it didn't matter if it was the afternoon, if it was the morning, if it was the middle of the night. And but now women have gotten accustomed to a certain case by this point in time. And so all of a sudden the stock goes up on contraceptives and birth control, because she's not with just being barefoot and pregnant no more. That she's found value and meaning and explored other gifts and contributions that she can make to society, that's giving great worth than just waiting around depending on this man to cover these areas. So now the man gets up, go to work, and he's waiting on breakfast. He said, "Hey, what are you doing?" She said, "I'm going to work. What are you doing?" And now the roles were shifted drastically without warning. And if I just come on up to evolution to where we are today, here's what it looks like today. Oftentimes, men don't know how to be men because unwisely they define their manhood just by a role. And so he says, I want to show this woman something. I like her, and I'm gonna show her I'm a good man for her. So I'm gonna go and pick her up in my car and take her for a ride. Cause he got a 1987 Cutlass that his granddaddy left him. And he pulls up and his 1987 Cutlass that got different colored doors on it from all the accidents over the years, but he washed it up real good. But when he pull up to pick her up, she's in a 500 series Benz, and he feels a little, oh, okay, well, I don't think this is going to impress her. So maybe I'll take her out to eat. That's it. I'll go and wine and dine her. And he takes her to this restaurant. But when it's time to pay, maybe they don't take EBT, and she pulls out her black card to pay for it all. He said, "Oh, okay, well, this is not how I'm going to be able to prove that I'm a man." So what does he do? He says, I'll take her to my crib, because I stay in the back house. They used to be the garage at my mom's place. And I got it fixed up. I'm going to show her my little bachelor pad in the old school garage back house behind my parents in the same lot. And only he tries to take her there to impress her, only to find out that she not only is a homeowner, she also owns rental property. He's like, okay, well, this is not doing it. This isn't working for me. So let me educate her. Let me give her game. Let me teach her about life. And he tries to give her his philosophy, his street philosophy on life. But she responds to him in some words he can't even pronounce, because he's barely got a GED. She has a PhD. And he feels disconnected in his ability to be a man for her, because the ways he's trying to fulfill his manhood and impress her are roles she really don't need him in. She don't need him to pay for her dinner because she makes double what he makes. She doesn't need him to pick her up in his car, because her car is much more dependable. She doesn't need him in just protecting her because she got mace and she a black belt and she got she knows how to handle herself. He doesn't need. So now he's talking to his granddad. Granddad, I'm trying to be a man to this woman. He said, well, son, you just got to put your foot down. He says, well, I tried to put my foot down, but it's her house. Says, you got to bring home the bacon. He said, I tried to bring home the bacon, but she already owned the whole pig. He says, I'm trying to be a man. I'm trying to be a man. And he's frustrated. And when the relationship is going silent, she wants him to be a man. She really does. But she don't know how to teach him how to be a man to her. That's his job. And when we get to the frustration in it all and things boil down and they're in the heat of a battle, all of a sudden he resorts to the one thing he still has. Because he says, I'm still stronger than you. I still have my strength. And I'm not justifying anything. I'm explaining what's been happening in the world. Because, and you can turn on the news right now, and I bet it's some fool that went off and beat his wife or killed her and the kids or just did something stupid. We see this foolishness happening every single day, and we haven't been applying solutions because he's been defining his role. He's been defining his manhood by his role. And the problem with that, what do you do when roles change? Because roles change all the time in society. That's not new. God never intended us to limit our definition of manhood or womanhood by a role, because they change sometimes. God intended us to define manhood and womanhood by purpose, because God's purpose for a man and God's purpose for a woman is the exact same as it was when he made Adam and Eve. That never changed. So when we get into that, and we dig deeper into the purposes, a man's purpose is to be a leader. Why? Why would you say that? Because God first formed Adam from the dust of the ground. Leader, he started with him. That made the male man the foundation. He's the foundation. I'm going to get into that a lot deeper later, probably in the next session, because I don't know I'm not going to have time in this one. But he's the foundation. He's the leader because he was first. It started with him. God never went back to the dirt to create another human being. When he got ready to give him a wife, he reached inside of him and pulled her out. So by God's purpose, man is supposed to be a leader by the purpose of God. So how can he be a proper husband to you? How can he be a proper father to the children when he hasn't even discovered his leadership ability, his leadership qualities? He's a leader by purpose. Next, he's also ordained to be a teacher. How? How is he ordained to be a teacher? He received the information first. God told him about the trees not to eat from. He had to relay it to Eve when she showed up, because when God gave him that commandment, she was still within him. He hadn't created her as a separate entity from him then. So if there's an accident and then you're dealing with the accident and the police say, who are you? I was the first on the scene. You just became the teacher by default because you were the first on the scene. So you're teaching them what happened. Hey, this car pulled up and that one came from behind him. So he was ordained to be a teacher. If you understand this, and I'm trying to explain something. If you understand this, you'll see why oftentimes, you ever had this problem with a man? I'm not justifying, I'm explaining this problem. I told you that. Why you didn't believe it when I said it? Now, as soon as your friend come over here and say the same thing that I tried to tell you, it's like, oh, you hear it now. Now you get it. But I told you that a week ago. I don't understand. You don't want to. This is his problem. I'm not justifying it. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying he's right, but I'm showing you what's embedded. So he's got to learn how to be a great teacher. You still have to be a student first. But he's a teacher. He's a cultivator. God never gave Adam furniture. He hid the furniture in the trees. He was designed to be able to cultivate. He's supposed to be able to take some raw material and know how to make it do what it do. And he's a protector. He put him in the garden to dress it and to keep it, cultivate and protect. So by purpose, this is what God gave him. The purpose of a woman, she's a life giver. God created her this way. He purposed her by design. She's able to produce life. And I could go a lot deeper into each every one of these, but I don't have time. She's an incubator. She's able to take something within her, nourish it, multiply it, and then bring it back in a much greater quality and quantity than it was when she received it. She's an enhancer. She has the ability to enhance. And lastly, she's a reflector. That's why you have to be careful what she takes in, because it will be reflected outwardly. And it's so many powerful things. And now we have to understand gender differences. God did not create us the same. When you study a man's brain and you study a woman's brain, they are so different, so different. I mean, biologically, he didn't create us the same. And it's important for us to understand that, because if I can't relate to the opposite sex, we're going to have problems with relationship, because I'm expecting things of you that maybe God didn't give you. And now I'm judging you unfairly because I'm having expectations of you based on how God created me. The problem with the world, one of the problems with relationships, is people don't see the world as it is. We tend to see the world as we are. We look at everything from a very limited viewpoint because we look at everything through the lenses of just how we are. And we expect the world to operate from that filter based on that standard. That's not how it works. Like when you study, I talked about a woman and a man's brain. If you look at a woman's brain, well, if you look at a man's brain, let me start with his brain. Everything is compartmentalized. This box is over here. This box is over here. Then over here, you have another box. And over here, you have his emotional side. Over here, you have his working logical side. Over here, everything is compartmentalized. When you look at a woman's brain and you study it, you see those same compartments, but there's wiring that goes through it that almost looks like spaghetti, because everything is connected. Everything is connected through this wiring force. This is why women are so good at multitasking and they feel so many things, because everything is wired. She's an emotional feeler. She feels it all. Men tend to be more logical thinkers. So give me an example. My wife could be cooking dinner, doing her homework, watching television, on the phone, and doing a crossword puzzle simultaneously. And she can say, hey, babe, could you cut these potatoes? We'll be ready to eat in a minute. Yeah, I cut the potatoes. I peel the potatoes. And I'm peeling the potatoes. Hey, could you do this? Hey, wait a minute. I'm peeling the potatoes. But you can't do that too. We do one thing good at a time. When I finish with these potatoes, then I can move to what's next. Asking me to do it simultaneously, that's a catastrophe waiting to happen. And this is how it would focus. I used to not know why I was like this because I thought it was crazy. I remember I used to come home uh, 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 I used to come home with my wife Precious. At the time, I'm come home from a long day work, and she just want to hug on me and love on me. She's been home all day, and she's been, preparing everything. I got food to eat. The house is ready, and she's waiting to love on me. And I would come home from work, and it would be like, oh, well, wait a minute, baby, just give me a minute. She said, well, I just want to hug on you. I want to love on you. And I know, but just I need a minute. And she, but I don't understand. What's wrong with you? It's a lot of men would love for their wives to be waiting on them and want to just hug on them and love on them and da da da. And I don't understand da 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 da. And the truth of the matter, I didn't understand either. And I remember doing some research, and I discovered that about a man being in different sides of his brain and how he was still in work mode. I'm still on that. I'm operating in that space because I found out when I come home, I take off my work clothes, I use the restroom, I wind down, I change, I get comfortable. I have time to, yes, decompress, to relax. Now I'm ready to be husband. I'm ready to be daddy. I'm ready. Well, oh no, now you want to hug me. Now you want to, but I'm ready because we didn't understand we're different. God created us differently. And until we both learned this new information, it was a problem. And once we learn it, she's like, okay, when he get home, I'm speaking out of it, I'm gonna give him about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're gonna be able to do all of that. It's learning to relate to one another, not judging one another based on how you are. You not with you. You're not marrying you. You're dealing with someone else. The truth of the matter, you get sick of you. If you didn't get sick of you, you wouldn't be worried about being lonely because it's just you. So learning to relate this way. Everything about women is a womb. She's a womb. I talked about yesterday how God left her open. She's a womb. Because she's a womb, she's built to receive. One of the primarily simple functions or differences between male and female is this. Here's a very simple one. Women were created as primarily receivers. Men were created primarily as givers. I'm talking about how God designed this. And I'm talking about what a lot of people that got on today. I'm talking about the way God designed us. So now, even when you look at how we're built sexually, the sexual organ of a man is meant to give. The sexual space of a woman is meant to receive. And that goes in all kind of aspects. Men, understand, she was created to receive your love, to receive your affection, to receive your money, to receive your time, to receive your attention. She's supposed to receive, but there's nothing wrong with that because what she receives, she multiplies. This is by design. Now, women, men are givers. He needs to be able to give something. Never deny him the ability to give. Oh, because he feels value when he can give. He feels meaning. He feels appreciated. Let him give. When he gives you advice, he feels good about himself. If he can give you something to help you out, he feels good about himself. If he says, hey, let me get that door for you. I know how to open my own door. It ain't about you not knowing how to open your own door. It's about allowing him to be who God created him, or it's going to turn around and bite you later. Let him give. He needs to be able to give. I wish I had time to get into that example. I don't. So am I qualified for love? Listen to this. I'm running out of time. You are the common denominator in all of your past, present, and future relationships. You alone are the common denominator, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent. You're the common denominator. So you have a responsibility to learn from every relationship you go through. Here's how I like to say it. Don't just go through it, grow through it. I'll say that again. Don't just go through stuff, grow through stuff. You should be able to look back and learn. And before you enter into something else, get knowledge and understanding before you jump into the mix. Now here, I want to conclude on this. Last point, because I'm out of time. As it deals with relationships, learning to relate. Know yourself first. The first person you need to be able to relate to is you. Because if you don't know yourself, you won't know who you need. Know yourself first. Know who you are. Do you love you? Before, no one else will love you more than you love you. That should never happen. Because the way you love you should set the standard to how someone else has to love you. You create that standard with the way you love you, and they have to come into that standard. Know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going in life, you don't know who's compatible for the journey. If you don't have a vision or an idea of where you're trying to go, how do you know? If I don't have a destination, how do I know what bus to get on? If I'm at the airport without a destination, how do I know what flight to catch? You can't even begin to effectively choose when you don't even know where you're headed. So we find this because I don't know who fit. Everybody that fit into your present don't necessarily fit into your future. Ooh, I need to say that again. That's why it ain't just about where you at. It's about where you're going, especially when you're talking about marriage. Marriage is not about where you are necessarily. It's more about where you're going. You don't marry somebody just because, baby, you're so fine and you make me laugh. You marry someone because you sense your destiny is connected to this person. And if you have no sense of what that destiny is, you won't know who you need. Because the more of where you are of that, the more you will know who don't fit. And you'll quit spending time and investing years in the wrong relationships. I am so not done, but I've got to stop. And if there's a demand for this when we finish, then I may come back and start doing something like this on a weekly basis. But it's all based on where the demand is at. But that's my time. I'm actually overtime because I've got one more session to conclude this. All right, Brian, it's on you, brother.